All right, folks, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a topic that you've probably noticed in politics but may not have had a name for. We're talking about something called vote bank politics. Sounds fancy, right?
Yeah, sounds like some insider strategy, but trust me, it's something we've all seen play out. Whether we live in democracies, big or small. Basically, it's when politicians focus on gaining support from specific communities, usually by making targeted promises or aligning with their concerns right before elections.
Right, and they're pretty strategic about it. They might attend cultural festivals, push out a new policy, or even take a public stand on a controversial issue, anything to show they're in sync with that community.
And sometimes, let's be honest, it looks almost too obvious, right? Like when a politician who never mentioned certain issues all of a sudden becomes the biggest supporter of those causes, just as the elections are around the corner.
Yeah, it's like, oh wow, look who suddenly loves our traditions. But jokes aside, it's an interesting tactic, and we want to explore whether this is just good politics or if it causes more harm in the long run.
So, let's break it down a bit more. The idea behind vote bank politics is simple. Politicians focus on winning over groups with shared interests, such as religion, ethnicity, or even profession. And the way they do it can range from symbolic gestures, like attending a community event, to actually passing laws or making promises that directly benefit those groups.
Yeah, and this isn't a new thing either. It's been around for a long time. Leaders have always known the power of rallying people around a shared identity. What's different today, though, is how quickly these efforts spread, thanks to social media.
Exactly. You can't just attend an event quietly anymore. Everything is live streamed, hashtagged, and spun into a narrative within minutes. If a leader shows up at, say, a religious event, it's trending on Twitter before they even leave.
But here's where things get tricky. What happens when this kind of focus alienates other communities, or when promises made to one group aren't followed through? Suddenly, what seemed like a smart strategy can backfire.
Yeah, and we've seen this across the globe. Leaders focusing on specific communities to swing elections, it's not limited to any one country.
Right. In some cases, it's about appealing to a diaspora, like aligning with a community that has influence both at home and abroad. In others, it's about addressing a community's historical grievances just in time for election season.
But we won't name names here because the idea isn't to point fingers. It's to understand how widespread this strategy is. And let's face it, almost every politician uses this tactic at some point. Some just do it better than others.
Yeah, some are really smooth about it. Others, not so much. You can practically hear their campaign managers whispering in their ear, "Don't forget to mention the festival."
Exactly. And the funny thing is, it often works, at least for the short term.
So let's talk about the pros and cons. On the positive side, when done well, this kind of targeted campaigning can actually give underrepresented communities a voice.
Yeah, it's not all bad. If a politician genuinely addresses issues that a particular group faces, say, better health care for rural communities or protections for migrant workers, that can lead to real change.
But, and there's always a but, right? The downside is that it can create divisions. When you focus too much on one group, others start to feel left out or even resentful.
And resentment is dangerous. It can lead to friction between communities that didn't exist before. Plus, it can backfire on the politicians themselves. If you promise too much and deliver too little, you risk losing the trust of the group you were trying to win over.
Yeah, and when that trust breaks, it's hard to rebuild. Suddenly those symbolic gestures don't mean much.
So, what do you all think? Have you noticed politicians using this strategy where you live? And do you think it's a fair way to campaign, or does it do more harm than good?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below or hit us up on social media. Do you think these tactics are smart, or are they a shortcut that hurts in the long run? All right, so let's wrap this up. Vote bank politics might help politicians win elections in the short term, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah, the long-term consequences can be serious. For one, it can strain relationships with other communities, both within the country and internationally.
And let's not forget the impact on society itself. When politicians focus too much on what makes us different, it can erode the unity that keeps a multicultural society together.
Exactly. It's like building a house but ignoring the foundation. Sure, it looks good for a while, but eventually the cracks start to show.
So while these strategies might seem clever in the moment, they're not a substitute for good governance. Politicians need to think long-term and focus on building trust and unity, not just winning elections.
And as voters, we need to hold them accountable for that. It's not enough to win. What matters is what happens after the victory.
Well said. Thanks for joining us today, folks. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care, everyone. Stay curious, stay engaged, and if you want to dive deeper into conversations like this, consider supporting us on Patreon. We'd love to continue the discussion there. See you next time.